तव कथामृतं तप्तजीवनं कविभिरीडितं कलशापहं शरवणमङ्गलं श्रीमदाततं भुवि गणन्ति Huriraja. Your words are like nectar, bring life to scorched souls. They are praised by poets and remove all sin. They are auspicious to hear, wonderful and exalted. Those who spread these words throughout the world are truly giving souls. Welcome, everyone, to our class on the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. We're on chapter 21, a day at Dakshineswar. It is Saturday, April 5th, 1884, and we're on page 422. Sri Ramakrishna has been talking to Ram, and who else is there? Mostly to Ramchandra Datta, who came. Yeah, if you remember last time, Ram was being a real troublemaker. Huh? He was asking all these, were just poking. Yeah, so he's going to continue. So anyhow, Sri Ramakrishna starts with a smile. Stop, don't torment me anymore. Why should I be involved in all this, all that? Now, Girindra, he's going to continue with the same thing. Girindra and Ram were friends. We saw last week, Girindra was Surindra's brother. Girindra, the Brahmo say that the Paramahamsa Dev has no faculty for organization. He used that term in English, faculty for organization. Master, what does that mean? M, that you don't know how to lead a sect, that your intellect is rather dull. They say things like that. All laugh. Master, to Ram, now tell me why my arm was hurt. Stand up and deliver a lecture on that. Laughter. The Brahmos insist that God is formless. Suppose they do. It is enough to call on him with sincerity of heart. If the devotee is sincere, then God, who is the inner guide of all, will certainly reveal to the devotee his true nature. Now, Sri Ramakrishna never objected to the Brahmo attitude, but he felt it was a little bit, he used to say, agge, a little one-sided or monotonous, or he would give the example of the flute that can play all the different notes, and that theirs just plays the same note over and over again. And he also felt that they weren't taking advantage of the devotional moods and attitudes that they could. Although he used to, interesting, he would call them jnanis, modern day jnanis, but he would also say very often, you're devotees, you're bhaktas. So he considered them to be devotees, but a little bit dry. They didn't have that kind of ecstatic type of devotion that Thakur felt was really essential. Oh, I wanted to correct something. Last week we were talking about this Keshav and the marriage of his daughter. So I thought I would look it up. Yeah, the Marriage Act or Age of Marriage Act, there was some official thing. It was 14, and she was 13. She was 13, and it turned out that it wasn't just the Brahmos that were so upset. The British were also upset. It was a big scandal. I didn't realize it. A lot of articles and things were written about that because the British thought that Keshav was one of the good Hindus, you could say. that he showed so much respect to them and to Christianity and everything. So that was a kind of a shock to everyone, even though it wasn't so much below the age. 14 is also way too young. Yeah, but that somehow, I don't know if that was the law of the land or the Brahmos had their own age restriction. You know, I think it was actually a legal type of thing also. But anyhow, that was why it was such a big scandal, partly for the Brahmos, but for all of Calcutta society. He was so well known, whatever he did. was a very big thing. So
Swamiji,
yeah,
I don't think it was illegal. Like that time, it was norm. Like many people used to give away their daughter from like very
yeah,
young.
there was still child marriage was
It
still
was child marriage, kind of.
the practice.
Yeah, child marriage.
Yeah, it was still the practice. So it may have been just the Brahmo, according to the Brahmo bylaws, but somehow the British also took it to be a breach somehow. Yeah. When was it actually outlawed, this child marriage? Now I think you have to be something like 18. Yeah, that's really
Still, it happens in Rajasthan. Like
yeah, of
in some
course.
village,
No,
it
of
happens.
course, of course.
Still it
Yeah, yeah.
But the bride doesn't come to the husband's house. She stays with her parents like
No, no,
we
that of
stay
course.
with our
We know
parents.
that, of course. Yes. Yeah, but still, yeah, it was considered. Actually, in many places, in many countries, these little girls do go and stay with the husband. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I didn't want to forget that because somehow I thought it was 15 and 16 this time. So the Brahmos insist that God is formless. So Thakur, uh, his concept of Brahman, we can say, was so uh, vast that it included everything, and he didn't like to see any restrictions or limitations. So for the Brahmos, uh, it says they insist that God is formless. That means that they look down on people who thought of God with form. Now, I've mentioned this many times that there are so many different ideas come into the mind when people hear this worship of God with form, Sakara Upasana, something like that. Uh, it seems clear from M's reaction and the Brahmo Samaj and everything that a large portion of the population at that time, and certainly the British were included, for them it meant image worship, which they called idol worship. So when in the beginning, when Sri Ramakrishna is talking to M about you believe in God with form without, the first thing he says, shouldn't people be told that they shouldn't worship a clay image, that they're worshiping God and not the image? So immediately in his mind, that idea of God with form was an image, or according to many, an idol. So that's a real, in many Western religions, that's a real type of heresy or blasphemy to worship an idol worship. Yeah, that has that stigma to it. But for Sri Ramakrishna, uh, it was a conception of God. Reality also, we can say, but that God could be worshipped in all different forms. And it doesn't have to be the visible form that we see. Within our heart, we can worship God taking a particular form. And taking the form of the avatar, this is also the way to worship God with form. These great souls who seeing God dwelling within all beings, seeing God as the ground of the whole universe, seeing this universe as the body of God, this Purusha Sukta idea. These are all different ways of worshiping God with form. So for Sri Ramakrishna, it was such a subtle doctrine, and goes so much against this very almost childlike idea that you talk about worshiping God with form. It means that you go into a temple and bow down before an image. Now, for Sri Ramakrishna, it was very clear. The whole point of his sadhana for the Divine Mother was, who am I worshiping here? Is it just this stone image before me? What is the real truth to this worship of the Divine Mother? That was the one thing that started that tremendous search for uh, that led to the first vision of Mother Kali, the Divine Mother. That what is the reality behind all of this? What is the truth behind all of this? So it even struck him a little bit. Am I just standing before the stone image and offering, or is there any reality to it? Is this a symbol for something? And uh, of course, Ramakrishna, he saw the image as full of life also, but that's a different type of thing. He saw everything as Chinmay. So It's very hard to say, but his point was that what the Brahmos are doing is fine, but this is one small possible note that's played in this whole symphony of spirituality within the Vedantic or Hindu tradition. So the Brahmos insist that God is formless. Suppose they do. It is enough to call on him with sincerity of heart. So this was another idea that Thakur had. The most important thing is sincerity. And if there are any mistakes, we don't like to talk about mistakes, but if there are any defects or any shortcomings in our understanding, that everything will be overcome by this sincerity. The mother herself will explain everything to us. So if the devotee is sincere, then God, who is the inner guide of all. So we see again how subtle this is. In the beginning, almost everyone's conception of God is external. We're worshiping God who dwells, either pervades the whole universe or in some divine realm outside of this universe. But the access point is within the heart. What Sri Ramakrishna used to say. We want to know that real sun. We have to find that reflected sun within, the divine presence within. This will be our access point to that. Then we can realize that all-pervading nature. But it is not good to say that what we ourselves think of God is the only truth, and what others think is false. That because we think of God as formless, therefore he is formless and cannot have any form. That because we think of God as having form, therefore he has form and cannot be formless. Can a man really fathom God's nature? Now, the worship of God with form, the problem with this is if we take the form that we like of God and take that to be something absolute. That God has to be worshipped as mother or as father. God has to be worshipped with this particular name or that particular name. For Sri Ramakrishna, it was the nature of a Brahmin to be able to manifest with all different forms and all different names, and can be approached and realized through any of these different forms and different names. So the concept of form is not anything fixed, really. So this is why that illustration of the ocean that can form blocks of ice is so important, because the nature of that block of ice will be different for everyone. It's based on, as he calls this, him shakti, this is power, cooling power of devotion. That the block will form in the form that we want to see, and it'll meld back into the ocean when the sun of knowledge rises. So it's not something absolute, but the reality is absolute. The form can be changeable. So his example, when we take water out of a pond, we take it out of that water is formless by nature, but it takes a certain shape. Now, the second that we use a different size bucket, it'll take a different shape. Or we use a pitcher, it'll take a different shape. So there's nothing absolute about the particular shape that it takes, but the essence is the water, and we're getting the water, and we can drink it and nourish ourselves and do everything with that water. That's the essential thing. But we fight over the form and the name. So this is why Thakur's idea of God with form is a very fluid concept. It'll be different for different people and different religions and different cultures and different individuals. But then finally, can a person really fathom God's nature? So we're just really poking around in the dark, trying to find something. There is a statement, I don't remember, that something about searching for a black cat in a dark room without any light on, something like that. This is the religious, there's some quote about that. This kind of friction exists between the Vaishnavas and the Shaktas. Now, Thakur is not saying always, but it can. There are certain groups that are very fanatical within these traditions. You can have Thakur belonged to a Vaishnava family that was very liberal. They worship Shiva, worship Divine Mother, and everything else. But there'll be a certain class among the Vaishnavas and the Shaktas that won't get along very much. And not just that, the Vaishnavas and the Shaivas, and especially in South, Vaishnavas and Shaivas, they don't get along very well. The Vaishnava says, my Keshava is the only savior, whereas the Shakta insists, my Bhagavati is the only savior. Once I took Vaishnav Charan to Mathur Babu. Now, Vaishnav Charan was a very learned Vaishnava and an orthodox devotee of his sect. He was very, very dear to Sri Ramakrishna, and he appreciated Sri Ramakrishna, even though he followed the traditions that Thakur was dead against. There's a Karta Bhaja and with his taking the wine and all sorts of other things. But Thakur was so liberal, he didn't mind. He went with him a few times, and then finally he said, no, I'm never going to go there again. But they had a very nice relationship. The Vaishnava Charan, he came to Sri Ramakrishna early. And Mathur Babu, of course, was patron, main supplier of his needs for Sri Ramakrishna for many, many years, and appreciated Sri Ramakrishna somehow. He was a worldly man. He had a lot of money. He had a lot of enjoyments and all sorts of things, but somehow he appreciated Sri Ramakrishna. And he was granted that very special vision when he saw Thakur walking in one direction looking like Shiva and the other direction looking like Kali. But he was a worldly man. This is how these things coexist. It's a very interesting kind of thing. So he got the two of them together. Once I took Vaishnav Charan to Mathur Babu. Now, Vaishnav Charan was a very learned Vaishnava and an orthodox devotee of his sect. Mathur, on the other hand, was a devotee of the Divine Mother. They were engaged in a friendly discussion when suddenly Vaishnav Charan said, Keshava is the only savior. No sooner did Mathur hear this than his face became red with anger, and he blurted out, you rascal. All laughed. He was a Shakta. Wasn't it natural for him to say that? I gave Vaishnav Charan a nudge. So Thakur enjoyed it. I see people who talk about religion constantly quarreling with one another. Hindus, Muslims, Brahmos, Shaktas, Vaishnavas, Shaivas, all quarrel with one another. They haven't the intelligence to understand that he who is called Krishna is also Shiva and the primal Shakti, and that it is he again who is called Jesus and Allah. Then he quotes, there's only one Rama, and he has 1,000 names. This is one of the earliest teachings of the Rig Veda. And then Thakur says, truth is one, only it is called by different names. This is Art Ekam Sat, Vipra Bahudha Badanti, that everybody knows, that set the tone for thousands of years after that of liberal way of understanding things, despite the fact that there were quarrels and things, despite the fact that there were fanatical groups within, that the overall tradition was extremely liberal with that understanding that the name and the form are secondary, the reality is the primary thing. Truth is one, only it is called by different names. All people are seeking the same truth. The variance is due to climate, temperament, and name. Now, what is this one truth? This always comes up in these interfaith gatherings because the Buddhists are always left out. Everybody says we're all calling on the same God. Huh? And they say, wait a minute. So there must be something even deeper than this conception of God. And They won't even talk about consciousness necessarily, but some type of experience, some direct experience. They'll have their enlightenment experience. For the Dalai Lama and many of the Buddhist traditions, uh, there's a level of joy that's reached through compassion. And this really, everything is just the effacement of the ego, that understanding that that's the source of suffering and problems in the world, and that there's a state of perfect peace and joy when we can transcend that. If we really want to find something that every tradition can accept, other traditions, of course, will say no, it has to be God. But uh, now there's this book, we were talking about it with, who was talking about it? With Desmond Tutu and Dalai Lama. Yogananda, yeah. And that was their conclusion, that this common feature is joy, something that goes beyond ordinary happiness, but some type of transcendent feeling of joy, which we would trace back to the real nature of the self within, or the divine presence within, but doesn't have to be understood in those terms.
Compassion is daya. And what is karuna? How are they different from it?
No difference. Karuna, daya, these are just different terms. Not much difference.
Same meaning?
Yeah, not much different. Karunamai, dayamai is the compassionate one, the loving, sweet nature. No, not much difference at all. Little bit idea of grace maybe comes in, but not much different. There are lots of synonyms in Sanskrit language. Now, when Thakur talks about daya, compassion, he has two different views of it. One is that this is the bare minimum that everyone has to have, this feeling of compassion for others. He says those who don't have this shouldn't be considered even human beings. Jardayane say manush hoy, manush noy. He says even you take this human form, you're not considered a human being. This is the bare minimum that we think about others. We have some compassion and fellow feeling for others. Other mood that Thakur would get in would be this idea of compassion is far too low, that it's based on a distinction between us and others, based on the feeling we're higher and they're lower, that we show compassion to people that we feel sorry for. And that, from that point of view, he thought that there was a much higher way of understanding this idea of compassion. So he said, God dwelling within others is a privilege to be able to serve them. Don't look upon it as compassion. And then the conversation with the Sikhs, that they like to use the term dayamai for their conception of God, whatever, the compassionate one. So Thakur said, why do you say that God is compassionate? So they were surprised. Even Swamiji one time, he was surprised. He said, what's wrong with saying that God is compassionate? So Thakur said, will you call the mother compassionate if she looks after her children? We show compassion on people who are a little bit strangers, or we don't know them personally, but if the mother changes the diaper of her baby, we say, oh, how compassionate, how kind. No, it's her own child. So the Thakur's point of view, that we should feel so close to God that we can even force our demands. No, you have to look after me. There's no great thing if you do that. This is your obligation and your duty. You're the mother and I'm the child. This type of idea. But he was never against compassion. It's a very wrong idea to think that he didn't care about others. We have so many examples going on pilgrimage with Matar Babu, how these poor villagers were there, half starving. He said, I'm not going to leave. I'm going to stay with them. You have to give them some food and some cloth and a little money and look after them, or else I'll stay here. You go on your pilgrimage without me. So he had a very tender heart. How he would tell others, look, there's a lack of water in the village, Rakhal's village. Why not build a well, dig a well or a tank or something for them, and this will be great service to them and everything. So he cared. But those who were too involved in fixing the world, he said, look, the ultimate goal in life is God realization. Don't get too involved with these, especially when you get older in life. Let the other people do it. And try to fix your mind on God at that point. So truth is one. What is that truth? It's very hard if we're in a interreligious setting to come up with a definition of that truth that everyone will accept, especially in the Buddhist tradition. That we come up with this idea of shunya and emptiness and things like that. But their idea is really this idea of emptiness and this anatma idea really is get rid of this ego. The ego seems to be that one block that keeps us from having any peace in life, even. Anyhow, truth is one, only it is called by different names. All people are seeking the same truth. The variance is due to climate, temperament, and name. So he's talking about now even different world religions. A lake has many ghats. Okay, this will be that example. From one ghat, the Hindus take water in jars and call it jal. From another ghat, the Muslims take water in leather bags and call it pani. From a third, the Christians take the same thing and call it water. All left because he used the English word, water. Suppose someone says that the thing is not jal but pani, or that it is not pani but water, or that it is not water but jal. It would indeed be ridiculous. But this very thing is at the root of the friction among sects, their misunderstanding, and quarrels. So this is based on the idea that when we talk about God, it's not just a concept, there's a reality behind it. And our understanding of that reality doesn't change it. And it doesn't limit it or restrict it. It restricts our understanding, that's all. And if we think that our understanding is the only understanding, then it'll be really ridiculous. Because who among us really can understand anything about any of this? We have a little bit of a glimpse of understanding because Sri Ramakrishna is telling us out of his own experience. And we know what sounds good to us and what's logical and what makes sense to us. But really, how much do we know of anything? Huh? There's the M. M has a good deal of real humility. In the very beginning, he says, yes, it's true. What do I know of God? And I'm trying to tell people how to worship and everything. It would indeed be ridiculous, but this very thing is at the root of the friction among sects, their misunderstandings and quarrels. This is why people injure and kill one another and shed blood in the name of religion. But this is not good. Everyone is going toward God. They will all realize him if they have sincerity and longing of heart. So this is Thakur's attitude. The Jnani will be seeking self-realization, going within, may not think in terms of the personal God at all. The Jnani and the Advaita and the Buddhist, they share a lot of things in common, actually. That there are kind of non-theistic schools within Vedanta that are highly praised. This Advaita Vedanta, there's especially from the Upanishads. If we go back to the Upanishad, there's not much of a concept of this personal God that we pray to, answers our prayers, and all of that. This comes later within Gita and then Puranas and everything else. To M, this is for you. So sometimes he would do it. He knows the attitude of the different devotees. This is for you. All scriptures, the Vedas, the Puranas, the Tantras, seek him alone and no one else. Only that one Satchidananda. That which is called Satchidananda Brahman in the Vedas is also called Satchidananda Shiva in the Tantra. Again, it is he alone who is called Satchidananda Krishna in the Puranas. Yeah, the Satchidananda is really a very full and complete way of understanding the nature of Brahman, which is really beyond our ability to comprehend. But it exists. Whatever we know about it or say about it is it's not a fiction. It exists, but it doesn't exist like any physical object exists. It exists how? As chit, as consciousness, and somehow the bliss aspect of Brahman is at the heart of Brahman because that realization fills it with bliss, and every feeling of joy that we have can be traced back to that self within. So we have these three aspects. This the existence of Brahman is not the existence of an ordinary thing. The Brahman exists because of consciousness. So if I say, Ulka, do you exist? Yeah. Now, do I referring to this physical person who's sitting in the chair? We mean the person, however we understand it. If that light of consciousness leaves, the same physical body is lying there. But we won't say that that person exists anymore. That person doesn't exist anymore. Body exists. At that point, we understand the distinction. So the existence of an individual is also chit. That sat and chit are both one. So they're not two separate things. How do we exist? We exist because we're conscious. We say living human beings, but really that consciousness accounts for our own feeling of existence. I know that I exist. Physical object doesn't know that it exists, as far as we know. So they're not two separate things. This chit is the way that sat, the way that Brahman exists as consciousness. And that consciousness is blissful somehow. That one is more difficult to understand exactly, that bliss aspect, except that the full experience of Brahman in Nirvikalpa Samadhi or in Nirvana, in enlightenment, fills the devotee with bliss. And there's no other source for it. So we say Ananda also. The master was told that now and then Ram cooked his own food at home. Master to M. Do you too cook your own meals? M. No, sir. Master. You may try it. With your meals, take a little clarified butter made from cow's milk that will purify your body and mind. Yeah, those who can lead an independent type of life. They're not dependent on other people for food or for anything else. There's a certain joy that comes from that. Swamiji emphasized this so much, that dependence is misery, independence is freedom. This idea that to be able to be self-sufficient is a very nice trait if we can be like that. A long conversation ensued about Ram's household affairs. Ram's father was a devout Vaishnava. They all had household problems. M was unhappy at home. Rakal was unhappy with his stepmother. We see with all of them. Mostly we'll see with Ram and with M and with Rakal, at least these three. So a long conversation ensued about Ram's household affairs. Ram's father was a devout Vaishnava and worshipped Krishna daily at home. He had married a second time when Ram was quite young. Yeah, in those days, for some reason, that many of the women died young.
During childbirth, a lot of them.
Yeah, during childbirth, many died during childbirth. This is true. Yeah. So there are many women were widows because very often they were married to a much older person. Yeah. And many of the men were widowers because, yeah, it could be in childbirth that many of them died. So Ram's father was a devout Vaishnava and worshipped Krishna daily at home. He had married a second time when Ram was quite young. Both the father and the stepmother lived with Ram at Ram's house. So normally the son lives in the house that was built or owned or the ancestral home of the parents of the father. This, for some reason, Ram was fairly well-to-do. He was a chemist. He was a pharmacist, so the doctor, and so he probably had a good income and built a nice house, and then also had his garden house and everything. So somehow the father and stepmother lived with him at his house. But Ram was never happy with his stepmother, and this sometimes created a misunderstanding between himself and his father. They were talking about this when Ram said, "My father has gone to the dogs." Master to the devotees. Did you hear that? The father has gone to the dogs and the son is all right. Yeah, Thakur was never happy when there were these unhappy relationships at home. How he wanted him to make up with his father and everything. And yeah. Ram, there is no peace when my stepmother comes home. There is always some trouble or other. Our family is about to break up. So I say, let her live with her father. Girendra to Ram. Why don't you two keep your wife at your father's home? Laughter. Master smiling. Are husband and wife like earthen pots or jars, that you may keep the pot in one place and the lid in another, Shiva in one place and Shakti in another. See, Sri Ramakrishna, as much as he talks about this emphasis on monastic life and everything, he had great respect for marriage. And he came from a very peaceful and wonderful family situation. His father and mother, father was very devout, and mother also equally devout. We don't hear of any quarrels or anything at home like that. So this was the norm for him. It seems to me that he was always surprised when he would hear about such lack of harmony in these different homes. Our father and mother mere trifles. Oh, no, let me see. Girindra. No, let me go back. Sir, we are quite happy, but when she comes, the family is broken up. If such is the case, Master, then build them a separate home. That will be a different thing. You will defray their monthly expenses. How worthy of worship one's parents are. Rakal asked me if he could take the food left on his father's plate. Now, there's a great stigma, for those who don't know, about allowing people or trying to take the leavings from somebody else's plate. Uchishta. Yeah. That very rarely is it done. Only we see it among kids. They have no qualms. They'll eat off the same plate next to each other. Young kids, close friends, something like that. And of course, taking some of the leavings from the guru's plate. This will be a special type of prasad. But in general, we're told, especially also, that it's very very bad to allow somebody to eat food that is left over. First of all, we're trying not to have any leftovers. We need to finish everything that we have. But if it's on our plate, we won't allow anybody else to touch it. So he's asking this question, but with regard to parents. Now, another big exception is we see.
Always eat what kids have left.
I was just going to say that. There's another exception that we see that parents, when they bring their small kids, that they'll end up eating the food off of their plate. That's a different thing. That's okay. This is what he'll say. That relationship is different. So Rakal asked me if he could take the food left on his father's plate. What do you mean? I said. What have you become that you cannot? Yeah, you think you're such a spiritual person or something. You shouldn't be able to do that. But it is also true that good people won't give anyone, even a dog, the food from their plates. Of course, we give to the deer here. But get into it. Sir, suppose one's parents are guilty of a terrible crime, a heinous sin. Master, what if they are? See, this relationship between parents and children, guru and disciple, these are very special relationships. Even husband and wife, brother and sister, all of these are special relationships that transcend ordinary things. That somebody does uh, something wrong, we don't abandon them or kick them out. So get into the ask. Suppose one's parents are guilty of a terrible crime, a heinous sin, Master. What if they are? You must not renounce your mother, even if she commits adultery. The woman guru of a certain family became corrupt. The members of the family said that they would like to make the son of the guru their spiritual guide. But I said, how is that? Will you accept the shoot and give up the yam? Suppose she is corrupt, still you must regard her as your Ishta. Then he quotes this little expression: though my guru visits the tavern, still to me he is the holy Nityananda. Now, this issue comes up sometimes, this idea that how do we accept a guru, somebody who's not leading a moral life? We're told that we have to examine the guru. This is the most important thing, that they have to be very pure and all of that. This is a different type of tradition. And we should examine first, but once we've accepted someone as a guru, then we have to, we can abandon that. And I may be wrong, but this could be something within this Goswami tradition that they have the family gurus, and you really don't get to choose. That this family guru will initiate everyone in your family, and you have to show them respect. This Kula Guru system, and they were householders. So it would go from father to son and everything like that. And this is how they earned their livelihood. Holy Mother, especially, showed them great respect also. And Thakur, anyone came who was a Goswami, who had that title, he showed them tremendous respect. They could trace their lineage back to Advaita or Nityananda, so to one of them that way. So this could be that also, that we have to show respect to these people, even if they have some type of faults and shortcomings. Are father and mother mere trifles? No spiritual practice will bear fruit unless they are pleased. Chaitanya was intoxicated with the love of God. Still, before taking to the monastic life, for how many days did he try to persuade his mother to give him her permission to become a monk? He said to her, Mother, don't worry, I shall visit you every now and then. They say, this is why he decided to go to Puri, because there was a lot of traffic back and forth between Bengal and Puri. Many pilgrims went. She could always get news of him, and she could see him whenever she wanted. Now, many will take this to mean that she could have his vision whenever she wanted to, that he would grant that somehow. But we find it's very interesting with Shankaracharya, who was so orthodox, that he promised his mother he would go back in the final days and do her final rites. We find with Buddha that he went back to the family after his enlightenment. We see Swamiji, how at the end he was ready to not even live in Bellarmine, have a little house and look after his mother and everything. And so there's so many examples. In the face of the Orthodox tradition, where you become a monk and you forget about family completely, that very Orthodox tradition, you can visit your parents once after 12 years. And before that, you don't even see them. And some of even among our monks, some of them take that type of attitude. Some of our monks are the exact opposite. They try to keep contact with parents and everything, but there should be some type of detachment there. But there have been many cases in our order where mother was in some type of financial trouble or something, or illness, or the father passed away, where they would actually send, if it's a newly joined monk, send him back home. You go home and look after your mother for a while, and when everything is better, you come back and join. Yeah, we have several different cases that I know of like that. Some of you know Swami Paramatmanandaji. Huh? He was from the Toronto, head of the Toronto Center. Yeah. This is very interesting that he joined just before Swami Swananji joined, and then had to go back home. And then Swami Swananji joined, and then he came back. So Swami Swananji always felt that he deserved the pranam, that he was senior to him. But officially, he joined after Swami Swananji, so he thought that Swami Swananji. So sometimes you would see them together, trying to make pranam to each other. Anyhow, tremendous mutual respect among them. But this is just two different types of traditions. That those who want to renounce the world, who was mother and who was father, we have this type of attitude. Yeah, we have that nice incident in the life of Latu Maharaj. Holy Mother was at Balaram Bose's house. He was there. She was about to leave. Everyone is going to take their leave. He's in his room, going back and forth, walking. Who was mother to a monk? Who was father to a monk? Something like that. And then Holy Mother came and said, "Oh, it's okay, my child. You don't have to see me." And he fell at her feet crying. You know? so we see this two different moods side by side. Of course, he didn't even. We don't know how old he was, if he ever knew his mother. He was an orphan boy. When we say orphan in India, it very often means that there's only one parent, or neither parent is able to keep the child, and they have to put him up, or he lives with somebody else. I don't know if we know too much about. Huh? To M, reproachfully, and let me say this to you. Your father and mother brought you up. You yourself are the father of several children, yet you have left home with your wife. He was never happy about this. You have cheated your parents. You have come away with your wife and children, and you feel that you have become a holy man. Your father doesn't need any money from you. Otherwise, I should have cried, shame on you. Everyone in the room became grave and remained silent. Now, this is after that long stay, when he stayed during Christmas time. And Thakur said, "Now, are you ready to go back home?" He said, "Yes." And can you make Sashtanga Pranam to your father? Yes, and everything. But still, it seems like he didn't do it. Master, a man has certain debts to pay, his debts to the gods and rishis, and his debts to his mother, father, and wife. He cannot achieve anything without paying the debt he owes to his parents. A man is indebted to his wife as well. Harish has renounced his wife and is living here. If he had left her unprovided for, then I should have called him an abominable wretch. Yeah, why he let his Harish stay, I don't know. He eventually went a little bit mad, but others who wanted to stay with him who were married, he wouldn't let them. He would say, "No, you go back home. You have your obligations and everything." He saw something in this Harish, I guess. After attaining knowledge, you will regard that very wife as the manifestation of the Divine Mother herself. It is written in the Chandi, the goddess dwells in all beings as the mother. It is she who has become your mother. All the women you see are only she, the Divine Mother. That is why I cannot rebuke even Brinde, the maid servant. We know about Brinde, that she led a very loose type of life when she was young. We have that incident where she felt very bold and took the dust of Thakur's feet, and he felt like he was stung by it. He said, "Get the Ganges water." And it was very hard to read incident, but so he's talking about somebody who did not lead a very moral type of life when she was young. But anyhow, I cannot rebuke even Brinde, the maidservant. There are people who spout verses from the scriptures and talk big, but in their conduct they are quite different. Ram Prasanna is constantly busy procuring opium and milk for the Hatha Yogi. This is a theme that's been going on here. He's trying to raise money all the time. He said that Manu enjoins it upon men to serve the sadhu, but his old mother hasn't enough to eat. She walks to the market to buy her own groceries. It makes me very angry. Yeah, I noticed when I lived in Calcutta for that 1 year that the men do all the grocery shopping in the morning. Is it the same in other parts of India? They'll go out in the morning with a little bag and they'll go and they'll buy the groceries and they'll come back and the wife will cook everything. Not in your part.
They come to the house. The vendors will come.
They'll come to the house. Yeah, some areas, yeah, I think, but
But usually men, yeah, I've seen that.
but it's the men who are supposed to do it.
Because I used to lift and bring things up, carry them, you know.
And also, you have to remember this during this period in Bengal, women had to remain veiled and everything. Yeah, respectable women. Yeah. So rather than send out this servant, even that they wouldn't do. The men would usually do it. I at least the family that I stayed with that time, he always went out in the morning for the shopping.
Actually, any affluent family,
Yeah.
the men used to do all outdoor work.
Yes.
Outside work.
Yeah. The women would have to stay inside. And yeah.
Women, yeah, and raising kids and
Yeah.
cooking.
Uh-huh.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
Anything outside home? men
So she walks to the market to buy her own groceries. So that was also a little bit of lack of respect to allow his mother to do that and everything. It's not just that the bags were too heavy or anything like that. It makes me very angry. But here you have to consider another thing. When a man is intoxicated with ecstatic love of God, then who is his father or mother or wife? His love of God is so intense that he becomes mad with it. Then he has no duty to perform. He is free from all debts. There's a very nice verse in Gita also. Yes, like that. Tasya karyam na vidyate. He has no obligation, no duty. The one who's Atmarama, the one who's intoxicated with the joy of the self, he has nothing that he has to do. He's beyond all of that. But it's rare. It's very rare. And people, to get out of their responsibilities and obligations, they pretend that they've become great holy people and everything. What is this divine intoxication? In this state, a man forgets the world. He also forgets his own body, which is so dear to all. Chaitanya had this intoxication. So now we know what is the standard. We're talking about somebody like a Chaitanya Deva. He plunged into the ocean, not knowing that it was the ocean. He dashed himself again and again on the ground. See, when he renounced the world, he was also married. He left behind a young wife, Vishnupriya. His first wife died of snake bite, and then somehow they convinced him to marry again. And within a short time, he became intoxicated with his love of God, and he felt he had no choice but to renounce everything. So Chaitanya had this intoxication. He plunged into the ocean, not knowing that it was the ocean. Yeah, thinking it was the Yamuna, and thinking of Krishna. He dashed himself again and again on the ground. He was not aware of hunger or thirst or of sleep. He was not at all conscious of any such thing as his body. All at once, Sri Ramakrishna exclaimed, "Ah, Chaitanya," and stood up. Master to the devotees. Chaitanya means undivided consciousness. Yeah, how he got the name, this is also something that is not really known. That really, this name that he was given, and generally we know Krishna Chaitanya. And one theory is that this was a brahmacharya name given. But I don't know if the Keshav Bharati. Keshav Bharati, he was belonged to the Shankaracharya Dashanami Sampradaya. He was a Bharati, and even this Ishwar Puri and Madhavendra Puri, all of them, they were all part of that Shankaracharya. They were, so you could say, Advaitins from that point of view, or at least following the Shankara tradition. But it wasn't so strong that they had to. In those days, in the North India, there weren't that many different monastic traditions. This Madhva Sampradaya and Ramanuja, that was mostly in the south. But anyhow, we have all of the songs. Ah, what a sight we saw in Keshav Bharati's hut, Gauranga and all this joy, tears flowing from his eye. There's so many songs about that. The Sanimai Sanyas. Yeah. So Keshav Bharati. All at once Ramakrishna exclaimed, "Ah!" Chaitanya stood up, master to the devotees. Chaitanya means undivided consciousness. The Vaishnav Charan used to say that Gauranga was like a bubble in the ocean of undivided consciousness. Yes, Swamiji used to say that Buddha and Christ and others, they were like waves in this ocean of undivided consciousness, or bubbles. To the elder Gopal, this is the future Swami Advaitananda. Do you intend to go on a pilgrimage now? Gopal, yes, sir. I should like to wander about a little. Ram, to Gopal. He, meaning the master, says that one becomes a Kutichaka after becoming a Bahudaka. The sadhu that visits many places is called a Bahudaka. It means Udaka is water, it's a tirtha. And Bahu goes to many different places, wanders from one holy place to another holy place.
What is Kuti Chakra?
They live in a kutia. They'll live in a kutia, they'll live in a hut someplace or something. I don't know how the word for this formed exactly, chaka or anything, but anyhow. So the sadhu that visits many holy places is called a bahudak. He whose craving for travel has been satisfied and who sits down in one place is called a kuti chaka. So this is Ram talking to Gopal. He also tells us a parable. Once a bird sat on the mast of a ship. When the ship sailed through the mouth of the Ganges into the black waters of the ocean, the bird failed to notice the fact. When it finally became aware of the ocean, it left the mast and flew north in search of land, but it found no limit to the water and so returned. After resting a while, it flew south. Then too it found no limit to the water. Panting for breath, the bird returned to the mast. Again, after resting a while, it flew east and then west. Finding no limit to the water in any direction, at last it settled down on the mast of the ship. It's not exactly the point of the parable. And Ram is telling it, that we wandered to meditate, and then we said, it's more about the Sharanagati, taking refuge. But anyhow. Master, to the elder Gopal and the other devotees, as long as a man feels that God is there, he is ignorant, but he attains knowledge when he feels that God is here. Thakur didn't encourage his close disciples very much to go in pilgrimage, partly because he knew that the greatest blessing for their spiritual life was to remain with him. That was the greatest pilgrimage, to have his company. And in certain cases, he was a little nervous. We'll see this when Rakal is in Vrindavan, how nervous he was the whole time. And he reads, oh, now Rakal has fever, what will happen to him, this and that. It becomes another one of the running themes through all of this. A man wanted to smoke. He went to a neighbor's house to light his charcoal. It was the dead of night, and the household was asleep. After he had knocked a great deal, someone came down to open the door. At sight of the man, he asked, "Hello, what's the matter?" The man replied, "Can't you guess? You know how fond I am of smoking. I've come here to light my charcoal." The neighbor said, "Ha ha, you are a fine man indeed. You took the trouble to come and do all this knocking at the door. Well, you have a lighted lantern in your hand." All that. So this is one idea. Why go anywhere? God is within. But the other idea is this udipana, that we get inspired when we go to these holy places. So we find that all the direct disciples, how many holy places they visited, that after Thakur passed away, they went from one place to another. Sadhus do that. And the atmosphere in some of these places is very conducive to spiritual practice. There's no question about that. Yeah. But there's a very high point of view that we reach a point where we just want to turn within. Just sit in an empty room, doesn't matter where it is, and turn within. What a man seeks is very near him. Still, he wanders about from place to place. Ram, sir, I now realize why a guru asked some of his disciples to visit the four principal holy places of the country. Once having wandered about, the disciple discovers that it is the same here as there. Then he returns to the guru. All this wandering is only to create faith in the guru's words. Ram has theories about everything. After this conversation had come to an end, Sri Ramakrishna extolled Ram's virtues. He was very devoted to Thakur. Master, to the devotees, how many fine qualities Ram possesses, how many devotees he serves and looks after. This Tarak, later Swami Shivananda, very often lived in this house, and this Nityagopal very often stayed there, and others they would put. In those days, there were so many generous people like that, especially teachers, or Kumar. He said most of the students lived in the house of the teacher. He didn't live at home that much. That was it. Swami Shivananda's father also that was a teacher. Many people lived in their house. Swami Paramesananji, his house was like that. To Ram, Adhar told me that you showed him great kindness. Adhar, a beloved householder disciple of the master, had recently arranged some religious music at his house. The master and many devotees had been present, but Adhar had forgotten to invite Ram, who was a very proud man. There's another big story. And had complained about it to his friends. So Adhar had gone to Ram's house to express his regret for the mistake. Ram, it wasn't really Adhar's mistake. I've come to know that Rakal is to blame. Now, Thakur won't like that. Rakal was given charge. Then before he can finish the sentence, Master, you mustn't find fault with Rakal. He is a mere child. Even now, you can bring out his mother's milk by squeezing his throat. Ram, sir, why should you speak that way? It was such an occasion. Master, interrupting. Adhar simply didn't remember to invite you. He is absent-minded. The other day, he went with me to Jadu Malik's house. As we took our leave, I said to him, you haven't offered anything to the goddess in the chapel. Sir, he said, I didn't know one should. To Ram, suppose he didn't invite you to his house. Why such a fuss about going to a place where the name of the Lord was sung? One may go unasked to participate in religious music. One doesn't have to be invited. Yeah, this is what happened that very first time that, or second, when Thakur told M, I'll be going to Balaram Bose's house tonight, why not come? And then thought, oh, without being invited, should I go? And Thakur said, no. For that type of occasion, simply mention my name, he said. Yeah. Om Niranjanam Nityamanantarupam Bhaktanukam Bhatadavikrahamai Ishavataram Parameshamidhyam Tam Ramakrishnam Shirasanamama. We bow our heads before Sri Ramakrishna, who is stainless, of infinite nature, whose heart melts in sympathy for his devotees, who is an embodiment of the divine and the Supreme Lord, and ever worthy of our worship. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. One reminder that Sunday, after the lecture, we have a distinguished visitor who's already here, Dr. Malloy Das, who wrote a very beautiful book on Swami Swanandaji, mostly about the sweet relationship that he had with him, and then later came out with a second book of reminiscences. And he very graciously agreed to come, and we have a lot of copies of his new book, and he'll do a book signing. This will be after the lecture Sunday. So everybody out there who is in our area, try to come. and also through his good wishes will serve lunch to everybody.